Looking back now, I should have seen the signs. But when you're in love, your heart has a way of glossing over the red flags your mind tries to wave at you. I'm Rose, and this is the story of how I met my husband and his family. David and I both worked at TechCore Solutions as software developers. He caught my eye right away, not just because he was handsome, but because he had this quiet confidence about him. Unlike some of our colleagues who lived and breathed code, David could actually hold a conversation about other things. "Hey, did you catch the new episode of Black Mirror last night?" he asked one morning, stopping by my desk with 2 cups of coffee. That was how it started, simple conversations about shared interests that grew into something more. We discovered we both loved sci-fi shows, hiking on weekends, and had the same terrible taste in B-movies. Our lunch breaks got longer, and our after-work quick coffees turned into dinner dates. Before I knew it, a year had passed, and David wanted me to meet his family. "They're really down to earth," he assured me as we drove to his mother's house. "Mom's excited to meet you, and my sister Sarah lives there too, with her husband Mike and their son Tommy." The house was modest but well kept, with toys scattered across the front yard. Sarah opened the door before we could knock, bouncing her 4-year-old on her hip. "Finally," she exclaimed, pulling David into a hug. "Mom, they're here." Linda, David's mother, appeared from the kitchen wearing an apron and a warm smile. "There's my successful son," she beamed, hugging him tight before turning to me. "And this must be Rose. David's told us so much about you." During dinner, I watched how they interacted. They seemed like a normal family, clearly proud of David's achievements at work. But something felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it until Sarah started talking about Tommy's upcoming birthday. "David," she said, giving him her best puppy dog eyes, "Tommy's been begging for that new Nintendo game." "The one with the dinosaurs?" "Sarah," David started, but his mother jumped in. "Oh, let him spoil his nephew a little. You're doing so well at that fancy tech company," Linda laughed, patting David's hand. Then she turned to me with what seemed like a light-hearted smile. "I just hope after the wedding, he won't forget he has a mother and sister to take care of too." I smiled politely, thinking she was joking. Everyone laughed, and the conversation moved on. I didn't realize then that her words weren't actually a joke at all. 6 months later, David and I got married in a small ceremony. We found a nice apartment for rent near our office, and I thought we were starting our life together perfectly. The honeymoon phase of our marriage didn't last long, literally. We'd barely unpacked our suitcases from our actual honeymoon when the requests started rolling in. First, it was Sarah calling about Tommy's school supplies. Then Linda needed help with some home repairs. The requests were endless, and each time, David would pull out his wallet without hesitation. At first, I tried to ignore it. The amounts weren't huge, and David made good money at TechCore. But it started to feel like death by 1,000 cuts, $100 here, $200 there. Every week brought a new emergency that only David could solve. One night, after Sarah called about needing money for Tommy's new winter clothes, I decided it was time for a conversation. I waited until David and I were doing the dishes together, our nightly routine. "Hun," I started, carefully choosing my words, "can we talk about something?" He looked at me, soap suds up to his elbows. "Sure, what's up?" "It's about the money, for your family." I saw his shoulders tense slightly. "Don't you think it's becoming a bit excessive?" David's face flushed with embarrassment as he dried his hands. I know. I'm just used to helping them out. I've been doing it since I got my first job." "But your mom has a good pension," I pointed out gently. "And Sarah has Mike, shouldn't he be providing for his own family?" David let out a long sigh and leaned against the counter. "Mike, well, he hasn't actually worked in over a year." "What?" I nearly dropped the plate I was drying. "Why not?" "He keeps quitting. Every job he gets, there's always something wrong. The work is too hard, the boss is unreasonable, the commute is too long." David ran his fingers through his hair in frustration. "There's always an excuse." I set down the dish towel and turned to face my husband. David, I love how much you care about your family. But we need to think about our future too. We want to buy a house someday, right? Have our own children? Of course, he nodded. Then we need to start prioritizing our own family, I said softly, taking his hand. Supporting your mom and sister is kind, but we can't keep doing it at the expense of our own dreams. David was quiet for a long moment, absently playing with my fingers. Finally, he looked up. You're right. We should be saving for our future. What if we set up a separate savings account specifically for the house? We can put a fixed amount in there every month, no touching it for any reason. That sounds perfect, I smiled, relieved he understood. We spent the rest of the evening planning our savings strategy, and for the first time since our wedding, I felt like we were truly on the same page about our future. 2 months into our new savings plan, Linda invited us over for Sunday dinner. I had a nagging feeling about it, but David insisted we should go. They're still family, he said, squeezing my hand as we drove over. The tension was palpable from the moment we walked in. Sarah was setting the table, her movements sharp and angry. Mike was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Linda's smile seemed forced as she hugged David, barely acknowledging my presence. The first 20 minutes of dinner were filled with awkward small talk about the weather and Linda's garden. I pushed my meatloaf around the plate, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It didn't take long. David, honey, Linda began, her voice dripping with sweetness, I noticed you haven't sent any money for the past 2 months. Is everything okay at work? The clinking of forks against plates stopped. I could feel everyone's eyes on us. David cleared his throat, and I saw him straighten his shoulders, something he always did when he was nervous. Actually, Mom, he said, his voice steady but quiet, Rose and I are saving up to buy a house. We want to start our own family soon. The silence that followed was deafening. Linda's fork clattered against her plate as she set it down, her eyes boring into me. Sarah's face turned red, and I could see the storm brewing. A house? Sarah's voice cracked. While I'm here pregnant with my second child, barely able to afford prenatal vitamins? Do you know how expensive baby things are these days? I felt my blood begin to boil. 2 months of biting my tongue, and I couldn't hold back anymore. Maybe your husband should think about that, I said, nodding toward Mike, who was still somehow managing to check his phone under the table. Sarah's face crumpled. How dare you? You're so cruel. The tears started flowing, right on cue. You don't understand our situation. Mike finally looked up from his phone. Hey, I'm trying here. Do you know how hard it is to find a good job in this economy? I'm dealing with depression, you know. Something in me snapped. Depression didn't stop you from having another baby, did it? The room exploded. Sarah wailed louder. Mike started defending himself about his job search, but Linda's voice rose above them all. You, she pointed her finger at me, face contorted with rage. You're trying to turn my son against his own family. We were happy before you came along with your selfish ideas. Selfish? I stood up so quickly, my chair scraped against the floor. Wanting to build a future with my husband is selfish? Mom, stop, David tried to interrupt, but Linda was on a roll. She's poisoning your mind against us. Your own mother and sister. How dare she tell us we can't have help from our own family? I couldn't take any more. Without a word, I grabbed my purse and walked out. David followed close behind, and we got into the car in silence. The sound of Linda's shout still echoed from the house as we pulled away. The drive home was painfully quiet. I watched the streetlights flash by, fighting back tears of frustration. Finally, as we pulled into our apartment complex, David spoke. You were right, he said softly. About everything. But maybe we need to be more gentle with them. They're not going to change overnight. I turned to look at him, saw the conflict written all over his face. Part of me wanted to argue that his family didn't deserve gentleness, that they needed a reality check. But looking at my husband's pained expression, I just nodded. The aftermath of our dinner confrontation played out in the most modern way possible, on social media. Sarah began posting daily updates that made my blood boil. Struggling to afford prenatal vitamins for my baby. Pregnant and broke, family struggle, one post read. Another showed an empty shopping cart, having to cut back on groceries this month. Sometimes I wonder how we'll manage with another little one on the way. The posts kept coming, each one more dramatic than the last. Pictures of Tommy looking sad beside empty toy store windows, long paragraphs about the importance of family support, pointed comments about some people having their priorities wrong. I caught David checking his phone constantly, his face getting more strained with each notification. One evening, after he'd been particularly quiet, I found him staring at a photo Sarah had posted of Tommy's worn-out shoes. "You can send her something," I said softly, touching his shoulder. "Small amounts. Just, let's keep our savings plan intact." The relief on his face was immediate. So David started sending Sarah a modest monthly amount again. Like magic, the tragic social media posts decreased, though they never completely stopped. Linda began extending dinner invitations once more, though the atmosphere was far from warm. "Would you like more potatoes, David?" Linda would ask warmly, then slide her eyes past me as if I were invisible. Sarah would only address her brother, speaking about me in the third person even when I sat right there. "I wonder if your wife would mind passing the salt," she'd say, staring at the ceiling. I took it all in stride. Because while they were busy giving me the cold shoulder, something amazing was happening at work. TechCore landed a massive contract with Global Tech, one of the biggest names in the industry. David and I had both been instrumental in securing the deal, and our compensation reflected that. Suddenly, our combined income nearly doubled. Our savings account grew faster than we'd ever dreamed possible. We kept living modestly, but allowed ourselves a few luxuries: a new hybrid SUV to replace David's struggling sedan, a weekend trip to the coast here and there. As our bank account grew, so did our dreams. We started looking at real estate listings, discussing neighborhoods, planning for our future. For the first time since our wedding, I felt like we were truly moving forward. It was during one of our now tense family dinners that Linda dropped her latest bomb. I was quietly eating my pot roast, trying to ignore the usual cold shoulders, when she cleared her throat dramatically. "I saw your vacation photos on Facebook," she announced, fixing me with an icy stare. "Palm Springs, wasn't it? That resort looked expensive." I felt David tense beside me. Here we go again, I thought. "Those infinity pools, luxury spa treatments," Linda continued, her voice dripping with disapproval. "Really, David, I don't think it's appropriate to flaunt such a luxurious lifestyle when your sister can barely make ends meet with 2 children." The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. As she spoke, the clicking of computer keys provided a steady background rhythm. Mike sat at the desk in the corner, completely absorbed in his newest video game, the third new release he'd bought this month, by my count. I couldn't help myself. "Speaking of making ends meet," I said, gesturing toward Mike, "there are plenty of job openings in tech support at our company. The pay is good, and the benefits are excellent." The clicking stopped for a moment, then resumed even louder. Sarah's face turned that familiar shade of red. "You have no idea what it's like," she snapped. "Try being a mother of 2 before you judge us." "Oh wait, you wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" The barb stung, but I kept my face neutral. Mike continued playing his game, apparently oblivious to the tension in the room. Or maybe he just didn't care. I could have pointed out that being a mother was Sarah's choice, just like having a second child while unemployed was their choice. I could have mentioned that the cost of Mike's gaming habit could probably cover those prenatal vitamins she was always complaining about on Facebook. I could have started another fight. Instead, I just shook my head and took another bite of pot roast. Later that night, as David and I drove home, I thought about the monthly transfers he still made to his sister's account. The amount wasn't small, it could have furnished an entire room in our future house, but our new salaries meant we could handle it without derailing our plans. Sometimes keeping the peace came with a price tag, and for now, we could afford it. Meanwhile, Sarah's demands evolved from subtle hints to full-blown gift registries. Every holiday, Christmas, Easter, birthdays, Mother's Day, yes, she expected gifts from her brother for Mother's Day, came with a detailed list of expensive items she needed for herself and the kids. "David, look at this," I said one evening, showing him the latest email from his sister. It was a Christmas list that included designer clothes, the latest iPad, and premium toys that cost more than our monthly car payment. David sighed, running his hands through his hair. "I'll talk to her. This is getting ridiculous." But when he called Sarah to explain that he was already helping with monthly support, the waterworks started immediately. I could hear her shrill voice through the phone, "I'll tell Mom. You care more about your wife's feelings than your own family's needs." After watching David struggle through 3 such conversations, I'd had enough. While he was in the shower one evening, I opened Sarah's latest gift requirements email and started editing. The $800 designer purse became a $400 alternative. The $1,000 iPad became a $500 tablet. Every item, cut exactly in half. "Here," I said, showing David my revised list. "This is what we're doing." He looked uncertain. "Sarah won't be happy." "Sarah's never happy," I pointed out. "But this is still generous." When the gifts were delivered, the reaction was exactly what I expected. Sarah called David in tears, and Linda left a scathing voicemail about cheap knockoffs. At the next family dinner, they both shot daggers at me with their eyes. "I just don't understand why you couldn't get the items I specifically requested," Sarah sniffed. I gave her my sweetest smile. "Oh, but didn't you know? It's not about the price tag, it's the thought that counts. We put a lot of thought into choosing these alternatives." The look she gave me could have curdled milk. A year passed in this strange dance of passive-aggressive gift-giving and tense family dinners. Then came the Easter gathering that would change everything. Sarah waited until everyone was seated at the table, then stood up with what she clearly thought was a radiant expression. "I have wonderful news," she announced. "We're expecting baby number 3. The fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I felt David stiffen beside me. A 3rd child? With no income? No home of their own? My mind spun with calculations of how much more this would add to our monthly family support payments. Mike, predictably, didn't look up from his phone. Linda, however, was ecstatic. "Oh, my darling," she cried, hugging Sarah. "This is wonderful news. 3 beautiful grandchildren." Then she turned to me, her eyes glittering with malice. "You should take notes, Rose. Sarah's such a wonderful example of a real woman. Here she is, about to have her 3rd child, while you still haven't given David any." The room went quiet. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. I set down my fork carefully, making sure my voice was steady when I spoke. "I believe in doing things in the right order," I said coolly. "First, build a stable foundation, like having our own home and being able to provide for our children without depending on handouts. Then, start a family." Linda and Sarah exchanged looks, before breaking into artificial laughter. "Oh, Rose," Linda said condescendingly, "you're so corporate. Family isn't about money and houses." "No," I agreed, taking a sip of water. "It's about responsibility." The tension around the table was thick enough to cut with a knife, but I didn't care anymore. Let them laugh. Let them think I was cold and calculating. At least my future children would have a roof over their heads that nobody could take away. Sarah's 3rd baby arrived in September, another boy. Meanwhile, David and I had reached our savings goal. After months of house hunting, we finally found it, our perfect home. A beautiful 2-story colonial with 4 bedrooms, a spacious backyard, and a kitchen that made me want to learn to cook properly. It was in an excellent school district, just a 20-minute drive from work. We spent weeks planning renovations, picking paint colors, and choosing furniture. Every room held a promise: the sunny bedroom that would make a perfect nursery, The basement we could turn into a playroom, the office space where we could work from home when needed. Then came the dinner invitation from Linda. "Mom wants us to come over tonight," David said, checking his phone. "She says it's important." Something felt off about the invitation, but I couldn't put my finger on what. When we arrived, everyone was there: Linda, Sarah, Mike, and all 3 kids. They had this strange, almost smug energy about them. Sarah was practically bouncing in her seat, while Linda wore the self-satisfied smile I'd learned to dread. "So," Linda began after we'd settled in, "I hear congratulations are in order. You bought a house?" I nodded, still riding the high of our achievement. "Yes, we just closed last week. It's perfect for..." "Well," Linda cut me off, "that's actually what we wanted to discuss." She folded her hands on the table like a business executive about to close a deal. "You and David are still young, no children yet. You can continue living in your apartment just fine." I felt my smile freeze. What was she getting at? "But Sarah, my poor girl, has 3 beautiful children, cramped up in this house. They need space to grow, a yard to play in." Linda's voice dripped with false concern. "So, we've decided that you should give your new house to Sarah and her family." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. But Linda's face remained serious. Sarah was nodding enthusiastically, while Mike finally looked up from his phone, showing interest for the first time in months. "I'm sorry, what?" I managed to say, looking between them. "You want us to give away our house? The house we spent years saving for?" Sarah leaned forward. "I'm a mother of 3, she said, as if that explained everything. "I have a right to provide my children with proper living conditions. You can always buy another house later." I turned to David, my heart pounding. "Are you hearing this? Do you finally see how entitled they are?" But before David could respond, Linda's smile widened. "Oh, sweetie," she said, her voice sickly sweet. "I raised my son right. He knows where his loyalties lie, with his mother and sister. Isn't that right, David?" Bang! David's fist came down on the table so hard the dishes rattled. He shot up from his chair, his face flushed with anger I'd never seen before. Linda and Sarah actually flinched, their smug expressions dissolving into shock. "That's enough," David's voice boomed through the room. Even Mike dropped his phone. "I have sat here for years watching you manipulate and guilt me. I've supported you financially, emotionally, constantly. I've given you money while you," he pointed at Mike, "sit around playing video games all day. I've listened to you insult my wife, belittle our choices, and demand more and more." Sarah opened her mouth to speak, but David cut her off. "No, you don't get to talk right now. Do you have any idea how much money I've given you over the years? Thousands upon thousands of dollars. And now you have the audacity to demand our house?" Linda tried to interject. "David, sweetie. Don't sweetie me, Mom. You think you raised me right? Teaching me that it's okay to leech off relatives? That it's acceptable to demand they give up their home?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You know what? You actually did raise me right enough to finally see how toxic this all is." He grabbed my hand, pulling me up from my chair. "We're done. All of this? It's over. No more money, no more gifts, no more manipulation. Find someone else to be your ATM." "But the children," Sarah started crying. "Should be your and Mike's responsibility," David shouted. "Not mine. Not Rose's. Yours." Still holding my hand, he pulled me toward the door. "Don't call us. Don't text us. Don't send us your lists of demands. We're done." The last thing I saw as we left was their stunned faces, frozen in disbelief. David practically ran to the car, helping me in before jumping into the driver's seat. As we pulled away from the curb, I couldn't help myself. I grabbed his face and kissed him hard. "I love you," I whispered against his lips. "I'm so proud of you." He hugged me tight, and I felt him trembling slightly. I should have done that years ago. I'm sorry it took me so long to stand up to them. The next few weeks were a hurricane of desperate attempts at contact. Linda called constantly, alternating between tears and threats. Sarah sent lengthy texts about how we were destroying her family. Flying monkeys, in the form of distant relatives, called to tell us how cruel we were being. But David stood firm. He blocked their numbers, unfriended them on social media, and we focused on making our new house a home. We painted walls, bought furniture, and started planting a garden. Each day that passed, I watched the weight of his family's manipulation lift from his shoulders. One morning, as we sat in our beautiful kitchen, drinking coffee and planning to convert one of the bedrooms into a nursery, David reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you," he said simply. "For helping me find my spine. For showing me what real family should be like. For being patient while I figured it all out." As I write this, sitting in our cozy living room, I can't help but smile. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you deserve. Sometimes you have to build your own. And that's exactly what we're doing, one day, one room, one dream at a time. The nursery paint samples are spread out on the coffee table in front of me, and tomorrow we have our first appointment with the fertility specialist. Life isn't perfect, but it's ours. And that's all that matters.
Hey there, I'm Sarah, a 32-year-old single mom doing my best to balance work, life, and raising my amazing little boy. It's a sunny Saturday, and I'm out in the backyard with my son, Ethan. He's 6 years old, bursting with energy and giggles, proudly showing off his new birthday present, a super cool toy robot that lights up and makes all sorts of awesome noises. As I sip my coffee, I can't help but think how sweet life is right now. My phone buzzes, interrupting my thoughts. Yo sis, we still on for the BBQ tomorrow? It's my brother Mike, my rock since Ethan's dad bailed when I was pregnant. I shoot back a quick hell yeah, and start mentally preparing for some quality family time. The next day rolls around and Mike arrives with his wife, Karen, and their daughter, Lily. Now, don't get me wrong, I adore my niece, but Karen, well, she's a whole different story. "Sarah, darling, you look so rested," Karen chirps, giving me an air kiss on both cheeks. I resist the urge to roll my eyes. And where's my favorite nephew? Right on cue, Ethan comes charging out of the house, robot in hand. "Uncle Mike, look what I got for my birthday." Mike scoots him up, genuinely excited. "Whoa, buddy, that's one cool robot." I notice Lily eyeing the toy, and that's when Karen's smile turns just a little too sharp. "Oh, Ethan, sweetie, why don't you let Lily play with your new toy? Sharing is caring, right?" I step in, keeping my tone light. "It's brand new, maybe later, yeah?" Karen's eyes narrow for a split second before she laughs it off. Of course, of course. "Lily, honey, why don't you see if Auntie Sarah needs help in the kitchen?" As they walk off, I catch Mike's eye. He shrugs, mouthing sorry behind Karen's back. The afternoon goes on, and I start to relax. The burgers are sizzling, the adults are enjoying their beers, and the kids are happily playing in the yard. Then, I hear it. Lily's high-pitched wail. "But I want the robot. Ethan won't share." I look over to see Ethan clutching his toy, Lily reaching for it. Before I can step in, Karen's already there, cooing to Lily. "Now, Ethan, be a good boy and let Lily have a turn. You don't want to be selfish, do you?" I feel my hackles rise. "Karen, it's Ethan's new toy. He doesn't have to share if he doesn't want to." Karen turns to me, all sugary sweetness. "Oh, but Sarah, we need to teach them to share, right?" Mike, caught in the middle, mumbles something noncommittal and suddenly becomes very interested in flipping burgers. I kneel down next to Ethan. "Buddy, it's your toy. You don't have to share if you're not ready. But maybe later, if you feel like it, you could show Lily how it works." Ethan nods, holding the robot even closer. Karen's smile stays frozen in place, but I can see the anger simmering in her eyes. As the day winds down and they're getting ready to leave, Karen corners me by the door. "You know, Sarah, you really should teach Ethan better manners. It's not good for him to be so possessive." I bite back a retort, forcing a smile. "Thanks for the advice, Karen. Drive safe." The next few weeks were like walking on eggshells. Every time Mike and Karen came over, It was the same old routine. Karen would zero in on Ethan's robot like a heat-seeking missile. "Oh, Ethan, sweetie, Lily's been asking about your robot. Why don't you let her play with it?" I grit my teeth, watching Ethan shrink back. "Karen, we've been over this. It's Ethan's special toy." She laughed, that high-pitched, fake sound. "Don't be silly, Sarah. Kids need to learn to share." One day, I caught her trying to sneak the robot into Lily's bag. When I called her out, she played dumb. "Oh, did I put that in there? Silly me, I thought it was one of Lily's toys." "Yeah, right, and I'm the Queen of England." Things came to a head at Mike's birthday dinner. We were all gathered around the table, Mike carving the roast, when Karen started up again. "Ethan, be a dear and let Lily play with your robot. Just for tonight." Ethan shook his head, clutching the toy. "No, it's mine." Karen's eyes flashed. "Now that's not very nice. Mike, don't you think Ethan should share?" Mike looked like he wanted to disappear into his mashed potatoes. That was it for me. "Karen, drop it. It's Ethan's toy. End of story." She turned on me, all pretense of niceness gone. "Well, I never. You're raising a selfish little brat, Sarah." The table went dead silent. Ethan's lower lip trembled. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly. "We're leaving." As we headed for the door, Karen called out, sickly sweet again. "Oh, Ethan, I baked you some cookies. Here, take them home." I should have said no. I should have trusted my gut. But Ethan looked so sad. I thought a cookie might cheer him up. Big mistake, huge. We got home, and Ethan scarfed down a cookie before bed. I was in the kitchen when I heard a thump from his room. "Ethan?" No answer. I ran in and found him on the floor, pale and sweating. "Baby, what's wrong?" He couldn't answer, just moaned and clutched his stomach. I've never driven so fast in my life. At the hospital, everything was a blur. Doctors, nurses, and terrifying words like poisoning and toxicology. Hours later, a doctor pulled me aside. "Miss Sarah, your son ingested a significant amount of rat poison. Do you have any at home?" My blood ran cold. "No, but he ate a cookie right before." And then it hit me, Karen. The cookies that had poisoned my baby. "Oh my God," I whispered, my legs giving out. The doctor caught me. "Miss Sarah, we need to inform the police. This was no accident." I nodded, rage building inside me. But as the cops questioned me, I realized I had no proof. It was my word against Karen's. As I sat by Ethan's hospital bed, watching machines keep my baby alive, I made a vow. I was going to prove what that psycho had done, and I was going to make her pay, no matter what it took. Once Ethan was out of the woods, I went into full-on mama bear mode. No way was I letting Karen get away with this. I needed dirt, and I needed it fast. I called up my ride or die, Alex. She's a badass journalist with a knack for digging up secrets. "Alex, I need your help. It's about Karen. Say no more, girl." "I'm on it." Alex worked her magic, and holy hell, did she deliver. Turns out our sweet sister-in-law had quite the rap sheet: petty theft, fraud, even a restraining order from an ex-boyfriend. But nothing stuck. She always wiggled out of it somehow. "Sarah, this chick's a straight-up narcissist with a god complex," Alex said, showing me the files. "But we need solid proof for what she did to Ethan." That's when Alex had this genius idea. "Let's set up cameras in your place, catch her red-handed at the next family thing." It felt sketchy, but hey, desperate times and all that. Next family dinner rolls around, and I'm a bundle of nerves. Ethan's still wary of Karen, sticking close to me. "Oh, Ethan, don't you want to play with Lily?" Karen coos, sickeningly sweet. "No," Ethan mumbles, hiding behind my leg. I see a flash of anger in Karen's eyes, but it's gone in a blink. Throughout dinner, I watch Karen like a hawk. She keeps trying to get close to Ethan's food or drinks, but I'm not having it. After dessert, I excuse myself to the kitchen. Through the hidden camera feed on my phone, I see Karen follow me. "Sarah, dear, let me help with the coffee." I turn my back for 1 second, and there it is, Karen slipping something into Ethan's juice. My heart's pounding, but I keep cool. "Thanks, Karen, I've got it." Back in the living room, Karen hands Ethan his juice. "Here you go, sweetie, drink up." I snatch it away. "Actually, Ethan's not thirsty, are you, baby?" Karen's face twists for a second before smoothing out. "Oh, but I insist, it's his favorite, isn't it?" That's when I lose it. Cut the crap, Karen. I saw what you did. She laughs nervously. What are you talking about? I pull out my phone, playing the footage. This poisoning my son again. The room goes dead silent. Mike looks like he's going to be sick. Karen's face shifts from confused to angry in seconds. You set me up. Like you set up my son. I spit back. Admit it, you poisoned him before with those cookies. And then, like a dam bursting, it all comes out. So what if I did? That little brat deserved it, always showing off that stupid robot, making my Lily feel bad. I just wanted to teach him a lesson. Mike stands up, his face ashen. Karen, what have you done? Karen whirls on him. Oh, grow a spine, Mike. Your sister's been turning Ethan against us from day one. I can't believe what I'm hearing. You poisoned a child over a toy? Are you insane? I could hardly keep my voice steady. I'm the only sane one here. Karen shrieked, her voice cracking with madness. You're all just jealous of me, of Lily. We deserve that robot. We deserve everything. It was like watching a mask fall away, revealing the monster beneath. Mike grabbed Lily, backing away from Karen. It's over, Karen, I said, my voice shaking. The police are on their way. As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance. Karen's eyes went wide, darting around like a cornered animal. You'll regret this, she hissed, then bolted for the door. We all stood there, shell-shocked, as Karen disappeared into the night. But I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next few days were a blur of police statements and family drama. Karen had vanished and Mike was a mess, torn between shock and guilt. As for me, I was riding a mix of relief and rage. We'll find her, Miss Sarah, the detective assured me. With this evidence, she won't get away with it. But days turned into weeks, and still no sign of Karen. The legal wheels were turning, but damn, they were slow. Then, out of nowhere, Mike called, his voice shaky. Sarah, it's Karen. There's been an accident. My heart did a weird flip. Is she? No, but it's bad, really bad. I rushed to the hospital, not sure what I was feeling. There was Karen, the woman who tried to kill my son, lying broken in a hospital bed. Karma's a bitch, huh? The doctor pulled us aside. The crash severed her spinal cord. She's paralyzed from the neck down. Mike broke down, but I felt nothing, just empty. Weeks passed. Ethan was bouncing back, the resilience of kids never ceasing to amaze me. Mike was stepping up, being the dad and uncle we needed. We were healing, slowly but surely. Karen, though, was facing a life of total dependency, no more manipulation, no more schemes, just her and her thoughts, day in and day out. One day, I decided to visit her. Don't ask me why. Closure, maybe. I walked into her room, seeing her hooked up to machines. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Come to gloat, Sarah. Her voice was weak, but the venom was still there. I sat down, looking her straight in the eye. No, Karen. I came to say goodbye. She scoffed. Spare me the pity party. Oh, this isn't pity. This is me telling you that you lost. You tried to hurt my son, to break our family, and look where it got you. It was an accident. I didn't mean to. I cut her off. Save it. You know what the difference between us is, Karen? I'd die for my child. You'd kill for yours. That's not love. That's obsession. Her face crumpled, but I wasn't done. You're going to lie here, day after day, knowing that Ethan is growing up happy and loved, that Mike and Lily are moving on. And you're just a cautionary tale. You can't leave me like this, she cried out. I stood up, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Watch me. Goodbye, Karen. I hope you find peace. God knows you need it. As I walked out, I heard her calling my name, begging me to come back, but I didn't turn around. That chapter of our lives was closed. Outside, I took a deep breath of fresh air. Ethan was waiting in the car with Mike, probably arguing over which superhero was the best. Alex had texted, asking if I wanted to grab a drink later. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and no one, not even Karen, could poison that. I slid into the driver's seat, smiling at my boy in the rearview mirror, ready to go home, kiddo. Ethan grinned, clutching his robot. Yeah, Mom, let's go home. As we drove off, leaving the hospital and Karen behind, I felt lighter than I had in months. We'd been through hell, but we'd come out stronger. And that toy robot, it sat proudly on our mantle, A reminder that sometimes the things worth fighting for aren't things at all. They're the people we love, the family we choose, and the strength we find when we need it most. The story of Sarah, Ethan, and Karen's twisted actions has come to an end. Now I've got a question for you. If you were in Sarah's shoes, visiting Karen in the hospital after everything that happened, what would you say to her? Would you forgive, seek revenge, or simply walk away? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This situation's pretty intense, and I'm curious to hear how you'd handle it. If this story got you thinking, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more gripping tales of family drama and justice. Your support keeps these stories coming, and trust me, there's plenty more where this came from. Hi, I'm Maria. Before I continue, please like and subscribe to support the channel and stay updated with more stories like mine. Life as a nurse is never boring, and neither is being a mom of two. Every day, I switch roles from caring for patients to nurturing my kids, especially my teenager, Emily. At 16, she's at that age where boundaries are constantly tested, and every no feels like a challenge. Despite the occasional teen drama, I've always believed in fostering a home environment built on honesty and accountability. One crisp Thursday evening, after a long shift at the hospital, I returned home to the usual chaos. Dinner half prepared, homework papers scattered everywhere, and Emily glued to her phone, texting nonstop on the couch. It wasn't until I went to my bedroom to put away the day's tips that I noticed something was off. My wallet felt lighter. A couple of $100 were missing, the kind of money you don't just misplace. I walked back to the living room and casually asked, have you seen some money I left in my purse? It seems to be missing. Emily barely glanced up from her phone, her voice hesitant. I meant to ask you about that. I needed some cash for a school project. You took it without asking, Emily. My tone was more of disappointment than anger. She sighed a little too dramatically. Mom, it was urgent and you were at work. I was going to tell you. That's not how we handle urgent matters, Emily. We don't just take things, I replied, trying to stay calm. You're grounded for the weekend. No going out with your friends. But that's so unfair, Emily protested, jumping to her feet. It's just money, and I was going to tell you. It's not about the money, it's about trust and respect. The argument escalated as her protests grew louder, but I stood firm. Grounding her felt like a mild punishment for breaking trust. Later, as I prepared dinner, trying to shake off the weight of our confrontation, Rick stormed in. His face was dark with anger, a look I knew all too well. You're grounding her for taking a little cash? Seriously, Maria? Rick's voice was steeped in disbelief as he threw his keys on the table. It's not about the amount, Rick. It's about honesty and consequences, I countered, feeling the tension rise between us. That's just your way of controlling her, like you try to control everything in this house. I sighed, trying to keep my cool. This isn't about control. It's about teaching our daughter the right values. Rick scoffed, pacing back and forth. Oh, and you're the perfect role model by what? Grounding her over every little mistake. Every little mistake. Emily admitted she took the money without asking. That's not a little mistake, that's stealing. He stopped pacing and glared at me. And you think you're perfect? Never done anything wrong. I shook my head, frustrated. This isn't about me. Why do you always make it about anything but the issue at hand? Because you make everything about rules and punishments. Maybe if you weren't so harsh, she wouldn't feel the need to hide things from us. Or maybe she would understand boundaries and respect if her father supported her mother in disciplining her when it's necessary. Rick's face turned red, his breathing grew heavier. You're turning my kids against me, Maria. You're painting me as the bad guy because I don't jump on your strict parenting bandwagon. Nobody is turning anyone against you. You're doing that all by yourself by undermining me in front of them. That's because you're unreasonable, he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. You want to control everything and everyone. That's not true, and deep down you know it. I'm trying to be a responsible parent, Rick. By what? Alienating your daughter? You think she's going to trust you? After this, I felt a pang in my heart. I'm her mother. It's my job to teach her right from wrong, and it's my job to protect her from your extreme measures. Extreme? Teaching our daughter that actions have consequences is extreme now. Rick's voice rose, and he looked like he was about to explode. You're impossible. And you're not helping by arguing with every decision I make, I shot back. Suddenly, his hand flew out, striking me across the face. The force knocked me back and pain radiated from my cheek. For a moment, there was stunned silence as we both realized what had just happened. I touched my cheek, the sting sharp and immediate. You hit me. Rick's eyes widened, perhaps surprised by his own actions. Maria, I didn't. You did. I interrupted, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. You just hit me. Our younger son, Jacob, peeked from behind the hallway corner, his eyes wide. Mom, are you okay? I quickly wiped my face, trying to shield him from any more of this ugliness. Yes, honey, I'm fine. Go back to your room, please. Jacob hesitated, his gaze shifting between Rick and me. Jacob, please, I urged, my voice softer. Reluctantly, he turned and disappeared back into his room. Turning back to Rick, I found my voice firmer, more determined. This can't go on. You need help. Rick, you can't just. He cut me off, his own voice breaking. Maria, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me, but... Sorry isn't enough this time, I said quietly, the resolve building inside me. This changes everything. As Rick stood there, looking lost and confused, I knew that this moment was a turning point. I needed to protect myself and my children, no matter what that meant for the future of our family. Sitting in the break room at the hospital, I poured my heart out to Linda, my colleague and closest confidant. The walls adorned with health posters felt like they were closing in on me as I recounted last night's horror. Rick hit me, Linda, right in front of Jacob, I whispered, the words heavy with shame and disbelief. Linda's expression hardened. This has gone too far, Maria. You can't let him get away with this. I know, but I feel so lost. It's like I don't even know who he is anymore. I admitted, the confusion and hurt swirling inside me. It's not just last night, is it? There have been other signs, haven't there? Linda's voice was gentle, coaxing the buried truths out of me. I nodded, memories flooding back. There were times when he'd lose his temper over nothing. He'd decide things without asking me, convincing me it was for the best. And you believed him because you wanted to keep the peace, Linda concluded. Exactly. I thought they were isolated incidents, but now, seeing them all together, I trailed off, the pattern too clear to ignore. Linda leaned forward, her resolve palpable. You need to document everything, Maria. Every incident, no matter how small it seemed at the time. Taking her advice to heart, I started gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I spoke to Emily and Jacob, who reluctantly shared their own observations of their father's erratic behavior. Emily confessed, he always said it was our little secret, not to upset you with the small stuff. And by small stuff, he meant his bursts of anger. I pressed gently. Emily nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I didn't want to make things worse, Mom. Realizing the extent of Rick's manipulation, I felt a surge of protectiveness. This ends now. We're safer knowing the truth. I dug deeper, finding emails where Rick had belittled my concerns about family finances or decisions about the kids' education. Each email, each testimonial from my children, added to the growing dossier of Rick's controlling nature. Back at work, I showed Linda my findings. She pored over the documents with a furrowed brow. This is more than enough for a strong case against him, Maria. Whether it's for custody, a restraining order, or whatever you decide you need. I just want to keep my children safe, I said, my voice firm with newfound determination. And you will, Linda assured me. You're doing the right thing. Gathering all this shows you're not just reacting to one bad night, you're responding to a pattern of behavior that's harmful to you and your kids. Empowered by Linda's support and the evidence laid out before me, I knew I was on the right path. I knew what I had to do next. The road ahead would be tough, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I wasn't walking it alone. The truth about Rick, once obscured by the facade of a temper barely kept in check, was now starkly clear. With that clarity came the path forward to protect my family and end the cycle of manipulation and fear. Armed with the truth and a folder thick with evidence, I confronted Rick in our living room, a space that had seen both the joys and shadows of our family life. Rick, we need to talk about what's been happening. I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. This can't continue, not just for my sake, but for our children's. He looked at me, wary but defiant. What are you talking about, Maria? The manipulation, the anger, the assault, I said, laying the papers on the coffee table. It all ends today. He scoffed, glancing at the documents. You think you can just end things, just like that? Yes, Rick, just like that. I was firm, my resolve unshakable. I'm filing for divorce, and I've spoken to a lawyer. Everything, your actions, your words, they're all documented. Rick's face paled. You're serious. Very serious, I replied. I've tolerated enough for the sake of what I thought was a partnership, but that's not what this is. As the reality settled in for him, I continued, I've also shared everything with the people who needed to know, your colleagues, our neighbors. Not to slander you, but to protect myself and our kids. You wouldn't dare, he said, his voice a mix of disbelief and anger. I already have, and the community has been more supportive than you think. I added, the strength of the collective backing me felt empowering. In the following days, Rick faced the consequences. His workplace conducted its own inquiry, and the disdain from our community was palpable. Friends we had known for years looked to him differently. Whispers followed him around, and his professional reputation took a hit from which it wouldn't easily recover. During this time, I worked on securing a stable and peaceful environment for Emily and Jacob. The local community center provided resources, and neighbors who once only greeted us in passing came forward with meals, words of support, and offers to help with the kids. One evening, sitting in the quiet of a home that no longer housed fear, I reflected on the journey. The peace was new, delicate, but promising. I watched Emily and Jacob playing in the yard, their laughter a balm to the many wounds we'd endured. I realized then, looking at their carefree smiles, that this was what liberation felt like. It wasn't just the absence of Rick and his oppressive shadow, but the presence of community, of hope, and the reclaiming of my own strength. In that moment, I knew we were going to be okay. Better than okay. We were going to thrive. The struggle had been harrowing, the decisions painful but necessary. As I watched my children play, I felt a profound sense of triumph. This wasn't just a victory for me, but for Emily and Jacob too. We had escaped a cycle of toxicity, and while the road ahead would have its own challenges, we would face them as a family of three, supported by a community that had shown us we were not alone. Rick's downfall was of his own making, his actions the architect of his demise. As he faced the cold reality of his choices, I embraced the warmth of a new beginning, surrounded by love and support. For the first time in a long time, I looked toward the future with hope, not fear, confident in the knowledge that we had not just survived, but were finally free to live. That brings us to the end of Maria's journey as she rebuilds her life with her children and finds support in her community. It raises an important question about handling toxic relationships, especially when they're within the family. What would you do if you were in Maria's position? Would you take the same steps or handle it differently? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. It's crucial to talk about these situations openly to help others who might be facing similar challenges. Your input can make a big difference. And if you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more discussions like this. Your support helps us keep these important conversations going. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to your comments. Hi, I'm Mara. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from my life. Now let's get into it. It's one of those mornings where an extra cup of coffee is non-negotiable. The sunlight barely filters through the closed blinds, as if trying not to disturb the fragile peace in our home. Here, in the quiet corner of the kitchen, I find a moment of solace with my medication lined up next to my mug, each pill a small promise of normalcy in my otherwise chaotic health journey. Ethan, have you seen my new prescription bottle? I call out, scanning the countertop. From the hallway, his voice echoes back, a mix of urgency and concern. I haven't touched it, Mara. Maybe check in the bathroom again. His suggestion sends me on a fruitless search through our small, cluttered apartment. Bathroom cabinets, bedroom nightstands, even under the couch. Places that have become all too familiar hiding spots for my essentials, especially when his mother visits. Your mom called last night, didn't she? I ask, my voice heavy with more than just curiosity as I confront Ethan in the living room. He pauses, a frown creasing his usually light features. Yeah, she did, Mara. She's just worried about us, about how much you're relying on those meds. Worried, or does she still think I'm faking it? The bitterness in my voice surprises even me. But it's hard to keep the edge out when Dorothy's disbelief has been a constant shadow over our marriage. Ethan sighs, running a hand over his face. She's from a different time, thinks differently. But she loves us, Mara. Does she love us, or does she love controlling us, Ethan? I press, not willing to back down. Every time she wades into our lives, I feel like I'm the one drowning. He steps closer, his intent to comfort clear. But his next words falter on his lips as if unsure. Mara, she suggested. Suggested what? My heart races, a mix of fear and anger simmering just below the surface. That maybe you try a few weeks without the meds to prove to her you're really sick. The room spins a bit, and I steady myself against the back of the sofa. And you told her what? That her unlicensed, unmedical opinion is more important than my doctor's. It's not like that, he insists. She thinks it's all in your head, Anne. And you didn't defend me? The accusation hangs heavy between us. I did, Mara. I always do. It's just hard, you know. His plea is sincere, his conflict obvious, but it's not enough to soothe the sting of betrayal. Hard for you or hard for me? I challenge, the pills in my hand, now a symbol of the battles I face, both seen and unseen, because right now it feels like I'm fighting this on my own. Ethan's shoulders slump, his usual resolve melting under the weight of our reality. I'm sorry, Mara. I'll talk to her again. I'll fix this. As he leaves for work, the promise lingers but does little to quell the turbulence left in his wake. I turn back to my pill organizer, the neat rows of capsules now blurred through the tears welling in my eyes. Here, in the quiet aftermath of our morning skirmish, I brace myself for the upcoming medical review and the ever-looming presence of Dorothy in our lives. Her skepticism a constant echo in our conversations. But as I stand resolute, I know this. I will fight for my health, with or without their belief, because in this battle, the truest victory is survival, and I intend to survive. You didn't. Please tell me you didn't just throw them away. I say, my voice a mix of disbelief and rising panic. I had to, Mara. Mom was so certain. You know how she gets. She thought if you went without them and nothing changed, she'd see she was wrong. Ethan's words tumble out in a rushed whisper, his face a portrait of regret. And you thought gambling with my health was the way to prove a point to your mother. The room feels colder, the walls inching closer as my heart hammers against my ribs. It's not like that. I just wanted peace, Mara, for all of us. He reaches out, but I step back, my trust fraying like worn fabric. Peace? By making me sick. You call that peace, Ethan? My laugh is hollow bitter as I back away from him. I'm sorry, I didn't think. No, you didn't think. That's exactly right. My words slice through the tense air, my anger sharpening them like knives. And now, without my meds, I'm spiraling. Do you get that? Spiraling, Ethan. He sinks into the couch, his hands buried in his hair, the weight of his choice pressing down on him visibly. I can fix this. I'll get new ones, talk to the doctor, whatever it takes. And what about her, Ethan? What about Dorothy? When do you stop letting her puppeteer our lives? My question hangs heavy between us, loaded with years of her interference. I don't know. Well, think fast, because I'm not going to sit around being your mother's experiment. I'm pacing now, each step releasing a fraction of the storm inside me. The next day, while Ethan's at work, I find the old tape recorder, dusty but functional. It feels deceitful, underhanded even, but what choice do I have? I tuck it into the lining of my purse, a small bulge of betrayal and necessity. At dinner, Dorothy is all smiles and passive-aggressive jabs. Feeling better today, dear? You look, well, the same. Her eyes gleam with unspoken accusations. Funny, isn't it? How some illnesses don't have faces. You never know the battle someone's fighting just by looking at them. My tone is casual, but my fingers twitch around the purse strap. Oh, I can imagine, Dorothy says, her voice dripping with false sweetness. So many people these days claim things just for attention. Not that I'm saying you are, dear, but it does make you wonder. Her words are sugared poison. It does make you wonder who you can really trust. I reply, my voice steady as the recorder silently captures every venom-laced word. Trust is important, you know. Ethan trusts me. He knows I only want what's best for him, for you both. Her voice is too smooth, too calculated. And what you think is best is what matters, right, Dorothy? even if it's not actually what's best for us? I challenged, steering the conversation like a pilot navigating stormy skies. Well, I am his mother. Who knows him better than me? Her laugh, light and chilling, fills the dining room, the recorder catching every bit of condescension, manipulation, and her blatant disregard for my well-being. Dinner with Dorothy is a masterclass in endurance, each course served with a side of insinuations. Really, Mara, all these medications, it's more mental, don't you think? A crutch, she says, her voice syrupy sweet, her words dipped in venom. Sometimes what we perceive as mental is just misunderstood. I counter smoothly, my fingers brushing against the recorder, ensuring it's still capturing every word. All misunderstandings are common in families. But we're family now, aren't we? We can be honest here. A smirk plays on Dorothy's lips, the kind that tells me she's enjoying this far too much. Honesty's a two-way street, I reply, keeping my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. The meal drags on, with Dorothy dancing around her true intentions, veiling her digs and fox concern. But as we linger over dessert, her guard drops just enough, coaxed by the false security of the familial setting. Ethan told me he helped you cleanse from those pesky pills. It's for the best, really, you'll see. Everyone will see soon enough that you've been just fine without them. Her grin is all teeth, no warmth. I feel a cold shiver down my spine, but I maintain my composure. And if I'm not just fine, I ask, my tone deceptively calm. Then I suppose you'll have proven me wrong, but we both know that won't happen, Dorothy. Her confidence is infuriating, but it's exactly what I need on tape. The next morning, my body betrays me. The lack of proper medication takes its toll, leaving me writhing on the floor, clutching my chest, gasping for breath. Ethan finds me, panic etched across his face as he dials for an ambulance. His mother's theories are far from his mind in the face of stark reality. In the sterile white of the hospital room, hooked to monitors and IVs, I make my plans. The recording is safe, tucked away, a silent ace up my sleeve. Ethan sits beside me, his eyes hollow with worry. I can't believe this happened, Mara. I should have never listened to her, he says, his voice breaking, laden with guilt. We can't change the past, but we can affect the future. It starts with facing the truth together. I reach for his hand, the recorder now burning a hole in my purse, metaphorically speaking. What do you mean? Ethan's brow furrows as his gaze meets mine. I recorded everything, Ethan. Every word your mother said about my illness, about the medication. It's time we confronted her with proof. My voice is firm, resolve steeled by nights of pain and betrayal. You recorded, Mom. His initial shock morphs into understanding, the pieces falling into place. Mara, if this is what it takes, then let's do it. Let's stop this once and for all. With legal counsel briefed and strategies laid out, the confrontation is inevitable. Dorothy arrives punctually, her demeanor composed, until we play the recording. The playback echoes through the room, her own words revealing the true nature of her intentions. This is out of context, she protests, her voice cracking as her carefully constructed facade begins to crumble. She stammered, the facade crumbling as she faced not just me, but an irrefutable betrayal of her own making. There's no context that justifies what you've done, Dorothy. I trusted you. We trusted you. And you endangered my life for what? To prove a point. Ethan's voice was steady, but the disappointment was palpable. The legal threats were clear. Her actions were not just morally reprehensible, but criminally liable. As Dorothy realized the gravity of the situation, her bluster deflated, replaced by a rare, reluctant silence. Sitting there, in that charged atmosphere of reckoning, the path forward became clearer than it had ever been. This battle, born from whispered conspiracies and cruel intentions, would end with the truth laid bare and justice, though delayed, ready to be served. This is it, Ethan. Today, we set things right, I said firmly as we sat across from Dorothy in the small, stark conference room of our lawyer's office. The air was tense, charged with the impending confrontation. Dorothy sat rigidly, her usual demeanor of control slipping as she glanced between Ethan and me, a flicker of unease in her eyes. I don't understand why we're here like this, Ethan, darling. What is this all about? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan's response was measured, but I could hear the tremble in his voice. Mom, it's about what you've done. Mara, play the recording. I nodded, pressing the play button on the recorder. Dorothy's voice filled the room, stark against the backdrop of her current vulnerable state. I told Ethan to get rid of those pills, her voice echoed, condemning her as the reality of her words settled in. Dorothy's face paled, her eyes darting to Ethan, searching for some sign of support, but there was none. Ethan, I was just worried. I didn't mean. You didn't mean what? Mom? To hurt me? To nearly kill my wife? Ethan's voice rose, a crescendo of pain and betrayal. How could you? How could you play with Mara's life like that? Dorothy stammered, her composure cracking. I thought it was for the best. I didn't believe she was really sick. I thought she was lying, taking you away from me. By risking her life? No, Mom, that's not concern. That's control, and it's wrong. Ethan's declaration was a barrier she couldn't cross. Miss Patel, our lawyer, interjected, her tone professional but stern. Mrs. Dorothy, we have enough here for a serious legal case, emotional abuse, endangerment, manipulation. What do you have to say for yourself? Dorothy's voice was barely a whisper, her usual fire reduced to embers. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Can we fix this? Sorry doesn't change what you did. We're moving forward with the charges, I said, not out of vengeance but out of necessity. The need for accountability was crystal clear. The legal discussions that followed were a blur, with terms like settlement and restraining orders tossed around. Dorothy agreed to a settlement, the terms strict and non-negotiable. She was to pay for all medical expenses and damages, a financial acknowledgement of her physical and emotional trespasses. As we left the office, Ethan took my hand, his grip tight. Mara, I'm so sorry for everything, for not standing by you sooner. It's going to take time, Ethan. A lot of it. But today was a good first step. I replied, my words not just for him, but for myself as well, a reminder of the path forward. I know, and I'm here for all of it. We'll rebuild together. Ethan's promise rang with a sincerity that had been missing before. The weight of his mother's influence finally lifted. In the days that followed, my health began to stabilize, my body no longer a battleground for familial warfare, but a testament to resilience. I started attending therapy, both individual and couples, with Ethan, each session a brick in the foundation we were rebuilding. Life settled into a new rhythm, one where my voice was heard and my health prioritized. Ethan and I grew closer, the scars of the past slowly healing into lessons for the future. And as I reclaimed my health and our life together, I knew this: I was no longer just a survivor, but a victor. My spirit and body were no longer shackled by deceit, but lifted by truth and justice. The story has reached its conclusion, and Mara's struggle for justice has unfolded. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you were in Mara's shoes, would you have gone as far as recording a private conversation to expose the truth? Or would you have chosen a different path to prove your point? Your opinions are valuable, and I'm really interested in seeing different perspectives on handling such a delicate situation. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more intriguing tales. Your support helps us continue to bring these stories to life.